Now let's talk about how to use your self-talk in a positive fashion. We're probably all familiar with that little voice inside our head that tends to provide a running commentary on how we're doing moment to moment. It's the voice that tells us to sit up straight. It's the voice that tells us we should remember someone's name. It's the voice that's trying to cue us on how to be successful, how to be acceptable, how to feel better. Unfortunately, when we're very stressed or anxious, it's not unusual for that inner voice to ramp up its efforts to gain control for us. This can sometimes be counterproductive. That constant nagging and jawing that inner critic, that inner tyrant can become is sometimes very distracting. Sometimes it's very activating because sometimes it even increases our stress about what we're not doing or how poorly we may feel about any given moment. This critic or this judge thinks that its best tool is telling us what not to do. Don't be so scared. Don't be such a baby. Don't forget to relax. Unfortunately, also, our mind doesn't process the word don't. It's just not possible. So all of that self-talk that's encouraging us to not do something isn't even possible. For instance, if I was to say to you, whatever you do right now, don't imagine a red car. Do not even think about a red car. I know what's happening just as you know what's happening. All we can think about is red car. Our mind doesn't process the word don't. So helping ourselves with suggestions about what to do when we're feeling stressed, when we're feeling anxious, or when we're feeling uncomfortable or a little out of control is our best strategy to try to employ. Saying things to yourself such as, take a few easy, refreshing, calming, cleansing breaths. I'm just going to take a few breaths. Can be extremely beneficial. Also, just identify what's happening for yourself. Use a little self-compassion and say, you're just fearful. All of this anxiety is just fear. And of course you're afraid. You have good reason to be afraid. It's okay to be afraid, but what do you want to do next? What do you want to do in spite of being afraid? That's what we're talking about in this series. Sometimes too, just telling yourself, let go, release the tension or the stress, soften your shoulders, soften your muscles, take a few moments to be easy. That sort of self-talk that can be comforting, that can be encouraging, that can slow down that inner voice in a very simple and gentle fashion. Sometimes telling ourselves, I know what to do, I just need a moment, and allow it to come to you. It's like when we're racing around looking for where we left the car keys. It's got to be here somewhere, and sometimes we just get really agitated trying to find it. But usually when we sit down and take a few breaths, the information comes to us. So allowing yourself to slow down that inner voice, to be more compassionate with yourself and give yourself simple encouragement. Soften, release, easy, can be very effective and very helpful. It sometimes is helpful also to say to yourself, I can ask questions now to get more information to feel more safe. Or to say to yourself, I can release this tension, for as quickly as it came on, it can pass. For tension, anxiety usually just bubbles up, and if we can just sit and breathe with it, it moves on. So telling yourself, patience, this too shall pass, is very effective. It's all about finding compassion, slowing down, and acknowledging, of course it's fearful, but I have a set of choices. So here are some simple, positive do phrases that you can use to quiet your inner critic, so that you don't feel hijacked by the moment. Say to yourself, take 3 easy, cleansing, calming breaths, and allow yourself to have those breaths. Try also saying to yourself the obvious. What you're feeling right now is fear. It's just fear. And of course you're afraid. You have some good reasons to be afraid, but right now you're more than afraid. You can choose to do something. What would you like to do about your fear right now? And give yourself a moment. You can also say to yourself very simple, brief instructions. Soften, so that you release your shoulders, soften your muscles. Open your belly so you can get a nice breath. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Send your breath to your feet. Feel the ground beneath your feet. And you can also say to yourself, I can control how I feel in this moment. And of course, you can always say to yourself what is so true. This too shall pass. Give yourself a moment. I'm going to take a moment and a breath and allow this to pass. The key, when the inner critic rears its ugly head, is to remind yourself, this is fear, but I have choices.